As the Apache warriors surrounded the soldiers in the narrow canyon, Caleb Thorne drew his gun on the mad colonel, knowing this shot could end everything, or save it all. But how did a broke drifter like Caleb end up in this life-or-death standoff, facing down the U.S. Army to protect a people who weren't even his own? It all started 3 years earlier, in a dusty Texas trading post, with a mysterious woman walking through the door and changing his fate forever. We've all had those moments, stuck in a dead-end life, haunted by regrets, wondering if anything will ever pull us out of the rut. For Caleb, that pull came in the form of eyes as dark as midnight, and a promise of danger that would test everything he thought he knew about himself. The trading post sat like a forgotten bone in the Texas dust, the kind of place where men came to forget their troubles or drown them in cheap whiskey. Inside, Caleb Thorne counted his last $3 silver and wondered if dying broke was worse than dying alone. He stared into his empty glass, the amber liquid long gone, leaving only the bitter aftertaste of missed opportunities. His brother's voice echoed in his head, sharp as it had been 3 years ago. "You always quit when it gets hard, Caleb. That's why you'll die alone." Marcus had said those words right before Caleb rode away, leaving him to bury their father by himself on that barren farm they'd called home. 2 months later, Marcus was dead too. Shot over a land dispute while Caleb was 3 states away, running from another mess he'd created. Debts he couldn't pay, promises he couldn't keep. The guilt gnawed at him like a coyote on a bone, reminding him of all the times he'd chosen the easy path, the quick escape. Now here he was, still running, still broke, still alone, with nothing but the worn-out boots on his feet and a horse that was one hard ride from giving out. The whiskey in his glass tasted like regret mixed with old leather. He was about to order another, scraping together his last coins, when she walked in. The Apache girl moved through the doorway like smoke through a canyon, silent and impossible to pin down. She wore a deerskin dress decorated with blue beads that caught the dim lantern light, and her black hair fell past her waist in a single thick braid. But it was her eyes that stopped Caleb cold. Dark as midnight, they swept the room once and landed on him like a brand, piercing through the haze of smoke and despair. Every man in the trading post went quiet, the clink of glasses and murmur of conversations dying away as if she'd sucked the air from the room. The trader, a fat man named Cletus with a sweat-stained apron, wiped his hands nervously and stepped forward. "Kiona, your father know you're here?" His voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear that Apache visitors often inspired in these parts. She ignored him completely. Her gaze stayed fixed on Caleb, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle, as if she were seeing not just the man he was, but the man he could be, or the one he feared he never would. Then she spoke, her voice low and clear, cutting through the silence like a knife. "You, come with me." Caleb set down his glass slowly, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since his army days. "Ma'am, I think you got the wrong man." He tried to keep his tone light, but there was an edge to it, born of too many close calls. "No." She pointed directly at him, her finger steady as a rifle barrel. "You are the one from my vision, a white man with sad eyes who would save us." Cletus laughed nervously, breaking the tension. "Now hold on, Kiona. You can't just walk in here and claim some stranger based on a dream. Your father would skin us all alive." The other patrons murmured in agreement, shifting uneasily in their seats. "My father sent me." Her chin lifted with fierce pride, her eyes never leaving Caleb's. "I am to bring him back. The elders say dreams lie, but I know this one is true." The room exploded with whispers, men leaning into each other, speculating about Apache mysticism and the dangers of getting involved. Caleb's mind raced. He'd heard stories about Apache customs, whispered around campfires. Tribes choosing outsiders for tests or trials, visions guiding their decisions. None of those stories ended well for the outsider. And now this girl was claiming a vision had pointed her straight to him? It sounded like madness or maybe a trap. But there was something in her eyes, desperation mixed with hope, that made him pause. "Look," Caleb said carefully, standing up to his full height. "I appreciate the offer, whatever it is, but I'm not interested in your people's troubles. I'm just passing through, trying to stay out of my own messes." Kiona's expression didn't change, but her voice grew firmer. "If you refuse, you will be dead by sunset." She said it matter-of-factly, like stating the weather. That got his attention, sending a chill down his spine despite the stifling heat of the post. She stepped closer, and Caleb caught the scent of sage and wood smoke clinging to her, evoking memories of wild lands he'd traversed alone. 3 days ago, you camped at Black Rock Spring. You buried the body of an Apache scout named Red Hawk. Caleb's blood went cold, his mind flashing back to that lonely spring. He had found the body, torn apart by what looked like a mountain lion's claws. The man had been young, his face peaceful in death despite the violence. Caleb had wrapped him in his own blanket and covered him with stones because it seemed like the right thing to do. The kind of decency Marcus would have shown without hesitation. It was a small act, but in the vast emptiness of the desert, it had felt significant. So, Caleb managed, trying to keep his voice steady. So my father is Red Hawk's brother, Chief Nakai. She paused, letting the name sink in, knowing its weight in these territories. He says any man who shows honor to the dead deserves a chance at life. But you must come now. Our camp is already under watch. The army captain has given us 2 weeks to prove our value, or he burns us out. You will help us prove it, because my vision says you will. Cletus grabbed Caleb's arm, his grip sweaty and urgent. Don't do it, son. Nakai's known for his tests. Most white men who go into his camp don't come back out. And this talk of visions? It's Apache trickery. Caleb looked at the girl, really looked at her. Beneath the fierce exterior, he saw something else. Desperation, yes, but also a flicker of vulnerability, like she was betting everything on this stranger. Hope, maybe, or fear that her dream was wrong. It reminded him of his own gambles, the ones that always seemed to fail. What would you do in his position? Walk away from a mystery that could change everything, or step into the unknown, risking it all? What happens if I come with you? He asked, his curiosity piqued despite the warnings. You face the trial. If you survive, you help my father negotiate with the soldiers. If not, she drew a finger across her throat, the gesture stark and final. And if I run? My father's warriors are watching this building. You won't make it to your horse. Her words hung in the air, and Caleb glanced out the window, spotting shadows moving in the dust, subtle, but there. Caleb thought about his empty pockets, his worn-out horse, and the long stretch of nothing that waited for him on every horizon. At least this promised something different. Danger, yes, but also purpose. And maybe, just maybe, a chance to stop being the man who always ran when things got hard. All right, he said, standing taller. Let's go meet your father. But as they stepped out into the blazing sun, warriors emerging from the shadows to escort them, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a path that would lead to blood and fire. The Apache camp sat in a canyon hidden so well that Caleb would have ridden past it a dozen times without noticing, its entrance concealed by overhanging rocks and thorny brush. Kiona led him through a narrow gap between 2 towering red rock walls, the path twisting like a serpent's spine. And suddenly they were surrounded by lodges made of animal hides and woven branches, cook fires flickering with the scent of roasting meat, and dark-eyed people who stared at him like he was a ghost walking among the living. Chief Nakai stood in the center of the camp, a tall man with silver streaking his black hair like veins of quartz and stone. Scars crisscrossed his bare chest, each one a testament to battles fought and survived. Stories etched in flesh that Caleb didn't want to know but couldn't help imagining. Behind him sat 12 older men, the council, their faces hard as the desert stone, wrinkled from years under the unrelenting sun. Kiona stopped 20 paces from her father and gestured for Caleb to step forward alone, her hand brushing his arm in a subtle show of support, or warning. You are the one who honored Red Hawk. Nakai's English was perfect, with only a slight accent that added gravity to his words, like the rumble of distant thunder. Yes, sir. I found him at the spring. Looked like a lion got him. I buried him proper because it seemed right, because no one deserves to be left for the buzzards. Caleb met the chief's eyes, holding the gaze despite the intimidation. Right. Nakai repeated the word like he was testing its weight, rolling it around in his mouth. Tell me, Drifter, why would a white man care about an Apache's bones? What drives a man like you to such kindness in a world that shows none? Caleb swallowed, the question hitting close to home. Because being dead shouldn't mean being forgotten. My brother died 3 years back, and I wasn't there to bury him. Someone else had to do it, and I regret that every day. Figured your man deserved better than what I gave my own kin. Something flickered in Nakai's eyes, recognition, perhaps, of shared pain. He spoke rapidly in Apache to the council, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against rocks, arguments flying back and forth in a language Caleb couldn't understand, but could feel the tension in. Finally, Nakai raised his hand for silence, his authority absolute. The council is divided. Half say we should kill you for trespassing on sacred ground. Half say your actions prove you have honor. He paused, his gaze piercing. There is only one way to settle this. You will pass the trial of worth. What's the trial? Caleb asked, his stomach nodding. You will spend 3 days and nights in the desert with no food, no water, no weapons. If you survive, you prove the spirits favor you. Then you ride with me to the army fort. Captain Morrison demands proof we can be useful allies. You will be that proof. Nakai's expression darkened. If you die in the desert, the spirits have judged us all unworthy. The soldiers will burn us out, and my daughter's vision was false. Vision? Caleb echoed, glancing at Kiona. Kiona spoke up, her voice steady despite the weight of every eye on her, the council's skepticism palpable. I dreamed of a white man with sad eyes who would save us. The elders say dreams lie. This trial will prove the truth, or expose me as a fool. Caleb's throat went dry, the pressure immense. That's a lot of pressure for a stranger. What if your vision is just a dream, nothing more? That is tradition. Nakai gestured, and 2 warriors stepped forward, their faces impassive. You have until sunrise to decide. Accept the trial or die now. Those are your choices. They locked him in a small lodge on the edge of camp, its walls made of tightly woven reeds that let in slivers of moonlight. No guards outside, because where could he run? The canyon walls rose straight up on all sides, sheer cliffs that would break a man's bones if he tried to climb, and the only way out led past a dozen warriors who'd be happy to put an arrow in his back. Caleb sat on the dirt floor and tried to think, his mind whirling with doubts. 3 days in the desert without supplies. It was a death sentence dressed up as a test. The heat would bake him, the thirst would drive him mad, and the nights would freeze his bones. He'd seen men die slower deaths, but none more cruel. Marcus's voice echoed again. You always quit when it gets hard. Not this time, Caleb thought, clenching his fists. Even if it kills me, not this time. But as the hours ticked by, doubts crept in like shadows lengthening at dusk. The lodge flap opened suddenly. Kiona slipped inside and let it fall closed behind her, moving with the grace of a deer in the wild. You should not have come, she said quietly, her voice a whisper in the dark. Didn't have much choice, thanks to you and your vision, Caleb replied, a hint of bitterness creeping in. I had no choice either. She sat across from him, her movements graceful even in anger, the beads on her dress clicking softly. The council demanded a test. My father chose you because of what you did for Red Hawk. He thought you might survive. But now, I'm not so sure. Doesn't sound like he thinks that anymore. Kiona's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing. The elders want you dead. They say no white man can be trusted, that your kind brings only death. My father is trying to save us all, but the old ways are strong. She looked away, her voice softening. If you die tomorrow, they will say my vision was false, that I brought bad medicine. My father will have to send me away to restore balance, exiled like a ghost. Now Caleb understood. This wasn't about him at all, not really. It was about a girl trying to save her place in the tribe, betting on a stranger because a dream told her to. And maybe save her people from an army captain who wouldn't care about the difference between peaceful Apaches and raiders. It was relatable in a way. Haven't we all chased a hunch, a gut feeling, when everything else seemed lost? So if I survive, you're safe? And your people get a chance to prove themselves to Morrison. If you survive, you prove the spirits favor us all. And me. She met his eyes, fierce and unyielding. But you won't survive. Not alone. Then help me. I cannot. The warriors watch everything. If I am caught, we both die, and my father's plan fails. You're good at not being caught. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. You got in here without anyone seeing, didn't you? Slipped past like smoke. Kiona hesitated, her dark eyes weighing the risks, calculating whether saving this stranger was worth her own skin, her future in the tribe. There is a place, she said finally, her decision made. 2 hours north of here. A cave with a spring inside. The elders don't know about it because it's hidden by fallen rocks. If you could reach it, how do I find it? She drew in the dirt with her finger, mapping out the path with precise lines. Follow the canyon north until you see 3 tall stones standing together like fingers pointing to the sky. The cave entrance is behind them, covered by brush. You'll need to move only at night and hide during the day. The warriors will track you, but if you're smart, if you listen to the desert, I'll have a chance. A small one. She stood, brushing dirt from her dress. I cannot help you more than this. If they catch me, we both die, and my people burn." She turned to leave, but Caleb caught her wrist gently. "Why are you doing this? Really? Risking everything for a drifter you don't know?" Kiona looked down at his hand, then back at his face, her expression softening just a fraction. "Because Red Hawk believed the spirits speak through small acts of kindness. You showed kindness to a dead man. That means something, to me at least." She pulled free gently. "Don't waste it. And remember, the desert tests not just the body, but the soul." They came for him at dawn, the first light painting the canyon walls in hues of gold and crimson. Caleb stood in the center of the camp while Nakai recited something in Apache, his voice carrying across the canyon like a chant, invoking spirits or ancestors. Caleb couldn't tell. The warriors formed a circle, hands on their weapons, eyes hard and watchful. Then Nakai switched to English. "The trial begins now. You will run north. We will not follow for 1 hour. After that, you belong to the desert." He stepped closer, his voice dropping so only Caleb could hear. "My daughter believes the spirits favor you. I hope she is right. For all our sakes." They stripped Caleb of his boots, his belt, his hat, leaving him in just his pants and shirt, vulnerable to the elements. Then Nakai pointed north and Caleb ran, his bare feet pounding the hot earth. The ground was already hot, rocks cutting his bare feet with every step, drawing blood that left dark spots in the dust. Behind him, the camp faded into the heat shimmer, a mirage of safety. Ahead stretched nothing but red stone and scrub brush and the merciless sun climbing higher, beating down like a hammer on an anvil. Caleb focused on Kiona's directions, repeating them like a mantra. 3 stones like fingers. Keep moving north. He scrambled up rocky slopes that tore his hands, skinning his palms raw, and slid down into arroyos where the heat collected like water in a bowl, suffocating and thick. Sweat poured off him, soaking his shirt. His mouth turned to cotton, thirst setting in quicker than he'd imagined. Marcus's face flashed in his mind, stern and disappointed. "You always quit when it gets hard, Caleb. That's why you'll die alone." He'd heard those words 3 years ago, but now, with his lips cracked and bleeding, he whispered back to the ghost. "Not this time. Not anymore." But the desert laughed at his resolve, whispering doubts in the wind. By midday, he knew he was in trouble. The sun hammered down relentlessly, blurring his vision, making the landscape swim. He found shade under an overhang and pressed himself against the cool stone, panting, his body screaming for water. That's when he heard the first warrior, his footsteps light but unmistakable. The man moved like a shadow across the canyon floor below, reading tracks that Caleb couldn't even see, bent twigs, disturbed pebbles, footprints in the sand. He studied the ground, looked up at the rocks, and turned directly toward Caleb's hiding spot, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. Caleb held his breath, his heart thundering. The warrior climbed closer, his moccasins silent on stone. 10 feet away. 5. Close enough that Caleb could see the eagle feather in his hair, fluttering slightly. Then a rattlesnake buzzed from a crevice to the warrior's left, its warning rattle piercing the silence. The man jumped back, reached for his knife, and the snake struck at empty air where his foot had been. By the time the warrior had backed away from the snake, cursing under his breath, Caleb had slipped deeper into the rocks and vanished, his pulse racing. Pure luck. Or maybe the spirits were playing games, testing both hunter and hunted. He traveled only at night after that, using the stars to guide him north, their twinkling lights a map in the vast blackness. His feet left bloody prints on the stone, each step a agony. Hunger gnawed at his belly like a living thing, but worse was the thirst. His tongue swelled, his lips cracked open. Every breath felt like inhaling fire from a forge. The desert whispered to him in his delirium, voices blending with the wind. Sometimes it sounded like Marcus, mocking him for trying when he should know better. Sometimes it sounded like his father, disappointed as always in his wayward son. And sometimes it sounded like Kiona, urging him forward, her words a lifeline in the madness. But on the second day, something went wrong. As he neared the 3 stones, his vision hazy from dehydration, he reached the cave and crawled inside, hands scraping on rough stone. The cool darkness enveloped him, and he heard the water dripping, salvation. He plunged his face into the small pool, drinking greedily, but as the water hit his stomach, cramps seized him, worse than hunger. Poison? No, something subtler, a faint bitterness he hadn't noticed in his desperation. One of the elders must have followed Kiona's trail, sabotaged the spring with just enough toxin to weaken, not kill outright. A test within a test, to see if he truly had the spirit's favor or if he was cheating. Caleb collapsed, vomiting, his body racked with pain, but he forced himself to think. He remembered desert plants Kiona had mentioned in passing, ones that could counteract poisons. Stumbling out, he found a cactus, sliced it open with a sharp rock, and ate the pulp, hoping it would neutralize the sabotage. Hours passed in agony, but slowly the cramps eased. He woke to find Kiona sitting beside the spring, watching him with a mix of relief and concern. "You made it," she said, her voice soft. Caleb sat up slowly, his head pounding like a drum. "One day. The trial ends at sunset tonight. You have 4 hours." She'd brought a leather pouch. Inside was dried meat, berries, and a water skin, clean this time. Caleb ate like a starving dog while she spoke, his hands shaking. "The warriors lost your trail at the Snake Rocks. My father is impressed. He told the council that perhaps the spirits do favor you after all." She paused. "But the elders are not convinced. They say you must have had help. They're searching the canyon now, and one of them, I think he found this place first, tried to ensure you failed. They'll find this cave." "Yes, which is why you need to go back." Caleb stopped chewing, staring at her. "Go back. Walk into camp on your own before sunset. Show them you survived with honor." Her dark eyes were fierce. "If they find you hiding here, they'll say you cheated. But if you return proud, covered in blood and dirt, proving you faced the desert and won." She touched his arm. "Then you become legend. And legends can convince army captains. I can barely walk after that poison. Then crawl if you have to." She stood, her resolve steeling him. "This was your test, Drifter. Not just surviving the desert, but choosing to return when you could run." She moved toward the cave entrance. "My father is giving you a chance to be something more than a man running from his past. Don't waste it." She disappeared into the daylight, leaving Caleb alone with his fear and his choice, the cave's cool air a temporary refuge. He thought about his brother, buried in an unmarked grave because Caleb had been too ashamed to go home and claim the body after running from the army. He thought about all the times he'd run when things got hard, all the bridges he'd burned, all the chances he'd wasted. The sabotage only made it clearer. This was about proving something to himself. Then he stood up, drank one more handful of water, carefully tasting it this time, and started walking south, each step a declaration. The sun was a red wound on the horizon when Caleb limped into the Apache camp. He walked through the circle of warriors, his bare feet leaving bloody prints in the dust, his body a map of cuts and burns. His lips were cracked, his skin burned raw from the sun. But his back was straight and his eyes were clear, defying the pain. Chief Nakai stood waiting, his arms crossed. Behind him, the council sat in silence, their expressions a mix of doubt and curiosity. Caleb stopped in front of the chief and waited, swaying slightly but unbowed. Nakai walked around him slowly, examining him like a horse at auction, noting every wound. 3 days in the desert, he said. No food, no water, no shelter. Most men die screaming. But you stand here, Drifter. Why? Because I'm tired of running, Caleb said, his voice rough as gravel. And because your daughter said the spirits speak through small acts of kindness. I figured I'd listen, even when someone tried to poison the water to make sure I failed. Nakai's expression didn't change, but a murmur rippled through the council. The council believes you had help. That someone showed you water. The council is welcome to believe what they want. I survived. That was the test, and if an elder sabotaged it, that proves nothing but their fear. No. Nakai stepped closer. Surviving was easy. Returning was the test. You could have kept running. Found your horse. Disappeared into Mexico. Instead, you came back to face judgment. He raised his voice so the whole camp could hear. This man has proven his worth. The spirits have spoken through his actions. From this day forward, he is under my protection. The council erupted in angry voices, accusations flying about sabotage and visions, but Nakai silenced them with a gesture. It is decided. Any who disagree may challenge my decision with steel. He waited. No one moved. Now we prepare. In 3 days, we ride to the fort. This man will help us convince Captain Morrison that we are allies, not enemies. The celebration that night was muted, the air thick with unresolved tensions. Everyone knew what waited in 3 days. The army's ultimatum loomed like a storm cloud. Caleb sat by the fire, letting warmth seep back into his bones. When Kiona approached, her steps light. You did it, she said softly, sitting beside him. We did it. Your directions saved my life. And your warning about the poison. No. You saved yourself when you chose to come back. She sat beside him. Most men would have run. You didn't. That's why my father believes in you. What about you? Do you believe in me? Or was the vision just a way to pick someone convenient? Kiona was quiet for a long moment, the firelight dancing in her eyes. I dreamed of you 3 weeks ago. A white man with sad eyes who would stand between two worlds and refuse to break. The elder said dreams lie. She looked at him directly. But you're here. So maybe dreams tell truth after all. I don't feel like much of a bridge between worlds. I feel like a man barely holding on. That's what bridges do. They hold on while everything tries to tear them apart. She touched his hand briefly, a spark passing between them. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, my father will teach you what you need to know about Morrison. The captain is not a good man, but neither are all in his command. 3 days later, they rode toward the fort under a sky heavy with clouds. Caleb sat on a borrowed horse, wearing new clothes the tribe had given him. Moccasins that fit better than his old boots, a shirt embroidered with patterns that told stories he was just beginning to learn. Beside him rode Nakai and Kiona. Behind them came 6 warriors, armed but peaceful, their faces painted for negotiation, not war. Morrison is a man who respects only strength, Nakai said as they traveled, the horses kicking up dust. He believes all Apaches are savages because it makes his job easier. If we seem weak, he will destroy us. If we seem too strong, he will fear us and destroy us anyway. We must walk a knife's edge. What does he want from you? Information about Comanche raiders who've been hitting supply trains. His men can't track them. We can. Nakai's jaw tightened. But if we help him, other tribes will call us traitors. If we don't, he burns our camp and scatters us to the reservations. So you're caught either way. Unless we find a third path. That's why you're here. You speak his language. You know his world. Maybe you can help us find that path. Fort Davis rose from the desert like a bad dream, its wooden walls stark against the landscape, dusty buildings housing hard-eyed soldiers who stopped their work to stare at the approaching Apaches. Caleb felt the tension crackling in the air, saw hands moving toward weapons, fingers itching for a fight. Captain Morrison met them at the gate. He was younger than Caleb expected, maybe 30, with cold blue eyes and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile, twisted in perpetual disdain. Chief Nakai, Morrison said, his tone dripping sarcasm. I see you brought your pet white man. Heard about him from my scouts. The one who survived your little desert test. This is Caleb Thorne, Nakai replied calmly, unflinching. He speaks for us today. Morrison's eyes flicked to Caleb, and something like recognition crossed his face. Thorne, you served with the 4th Cavalry out of Fort Griffin. 3 years ago, yeah. Before I left, dishonorably, as they called it. Then you know how this works. Morrison's voice dripped contempt. I've got orders to secure this territory. That means finding those Comanche raiders and making examples of them. Your Apache friends here can help, or they can join the raiders in hell. Makes no difference to me. Caleb felt Nakai tense beside him. This was the moment. The knife's edge where everything could go wrong, or right. Captain, Caleb said carefully, these people want to help. They've got tracking skills your men don't. They know this territory better than anyone. But they need something in return. Protection from relocation orders. Recognition as allies, not enemies. Allies? Morrison laughed, a harsh bark. Apaches aren't allies. They're problems waiting to happen. Like the Comanche are problems happening right now? Caleb kept his voice level. How many supply trains have they hit this month? 4. 5. How many men have you lost trying to track them? Morrison's face darkened, veins bulging. That's army business. And it'll keep being army business until someone helps you find them. Caleb gestured to Nakai. These people can do that, but not if you treat them like animals. You've gone native, Thorne. Forgotten where you came from. No, Captain. I remembered who I was before the uniform told me who to hate. The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Morrison's hand moved toward his pistol, and Caleb knew he'd pushed too far. But then a shocking revelation hit him. Morrison's scouts had mentioned the land dispute that killed Marcus. Could it have been army involvement? No time to dwell now. Then Kiona stepped forward, breaking the standoff. Captain Morrison, I am Chief Nakai's daughter. I have tracked the Comanche raiders you seek. Every eye turned to her. Morrison's sneer deepened. You? A squaw? I found their camp yesterday. 20 miles northwest, in the Red Canyon country. 12 warriors, maybe 15. They're planning another raid in 3 days. Her voice was steady, fearless. I can take you there. Prove what we can do. Morrison studied her with obvious disbelief. You're lying. No one can track that well, especially not a woman. Then test me. Give me one of your scouts. We'll ride out together. If I'm wrong, you can burn our camp as you planned. If I'm right, she glanced at her father. You give us what we ask. Protection. Recognition. Peace. Nakai's face showed nothing, but Caleb could see the pride in his eyes, swelling like a river after rain. Morrison considered this, his cold eyes calculating. Fine. Take Sergeant Daniels. He's the best tracker we've got. If you can lead him to that camp, I'll consider your offer. But if you're wasting my time, he let the threat hang, ominous. I'm not, Kiona said simply, her confidence unshakable. They left within the hour. Kiona rode ahead with Sergeant Daniels, a grizzled soldier who clearly didn't believe an Apache girl could out-track him, muttering under his breath. Caleb followed with Nakai and 2 warriors, while Morrison stayed at the fort with orders to follow if Daniels confirmed the camp's location. As they rode into the broken country northwest of the fort, Caleb moved his horse close to Kiona's. You really found them? Yesterday, while you were recovering from the desert. She pointed to barely visible marks on the ground. Scratches that could be hoof prints, disturbed stones. They're not careful. They think no one watches these canyons. Morrison won't be grateful even if you're right. I know, but it gives us leverage. That's all we need. She smiled slightly, a rare glimpse of lightness. My father taught me this. When you're weak, you don't beg. You make yourself valuable. And besides, if I can out-track Daniels, it'll be worth it just to see his face. Caleb chuckled despite the tension. You're merciless. Only when I need to be. Her grin widened, adding a touch of humor to the dire ride. They traveled through the afternoon, Kiona reading signs that Daniels couldn't see, broken twigs, disturbed pebbles, scratches on rock that might have been made by a horse's shoe weeks ago. She followed a trail that seemed invisible to everyone else, explaining occasionally with a wry comment that left Daniels grumbling. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery oranges, she led them up a narrow canyon. At the top, she held up a hand for silence and pointed down into the valley below. Smoke rose from a hidden camp. Horses grazed nearby. And moving between the fires were warriors painted for war, their voices carrying faintly on the wind. Daniels stared in disbelief. I'll be damned. She did it. Go tell Morrison, Nakai said quietly. We'll watch them until you return. Daniels rode hard back to the fort. Within 2 hours, Morrison arrived with 30 soldiers, their horses lathered. He found Nakai, Kiona, and Caleb exactly where they'd said they'd be, watching the Comanche camp from above. How did you find them? Morrison demanded, dismounting with a thud. She reads the land like you read a map, Caleb said. That's what we've been trying to tell you. These people know things your soldiers don't. Morrison studied the camp below, calculating odds and angles, his mind a battlefield. We hit them at dawn. Standard raid formation. No, Nakai said firmly. Excuse me? If you attack, they scatter. Then you spend months hunting them again, and more supply trains burn. Nakai's eyes were hard. Let me talk to them first. Warrior to warrior. Give them a chance to surrender. Why would I do that? Because it ends this without bloodshed. And because it proves we are allies who value peace over violence. Nakai's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Unless you prefer war? Unless killing is easier than talking. Caleb saw Morrison's jaw clench. The captain wanted to refuse, wanted to prove his dominance. But he also wasn't stupid. A clean resolution would look good in his reports. Make him seem capable rather than desperate. You have 1 hour, Morrison said finally. After that, we attack. Dawn came cold and clear, the air crisp with anticipation. Nakai rode down into the Comanche camp alone, his hands empty, his posture proud as he approached the wary sentries. Caleb watched from the ridge with his heart hammering, knowing this could go wrong in 100 different ways. Ambush, refusal, a stray arrow. The Comanche warriors surrounded Nakai with weapons drawn, bows taut, knives glinting. Their leader, a scarred man with gray in his hair and eyes that had seen too much war, stepped forward. They spoke in a language Caleb couldn't understand, but he could read the body language. Anger, pride, defiance, gestures sharp as blades. Then something shifted. Nakai pointed toward the ridge where Morrison's soldiers waited, silhouetted against the rising sun. Made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the entire canyon, emphasizing the trap. The The Comanche leader looked up, seeing for the first time how surrounded they were, the odds stacked. Nakai kept talking, his voice carrying on the morning wind. Caleb caught a few Apache words he'd learned: honor, survival, choice. Words that transcended language. The conversation lasted nearly the full hour, tensions rising and falling like the sun's ascent. Then the Comanche leader raised his hand, and his warriors lowered their weapons, a collective breath released. He did it, Kiona breathed, her hand finding Caleb's. He convinced them. Morrison rode down with his men, his face a mask of reluctant acceptance. The Comanche leader spoke through Nakai, who translated. They agreed to stop raiding in exchange for hunting rights in the northern canyons. They're tired of fighting, tired of losing men. They want peace. Morrison looked suspicious, his eyes narrowing. Just like that. Not just like that. They ask for dignity, for land where they can live without being hunted. Nakai met Morrison's eyes. Give them this and the raids end. Refuse and they disappear into Mexico. Then you can explain to your superiors why the problem got worse. It was a gamble, a desperate play. But it worked, the logic undeniable. Morrison agreed to the terms, pending approval from his colonel. The Comanche packed their camp and moved north under army escort. No shots fired. No blood spilled. Just words and choices and the fragile hope that maybe two worlds could exist without destroying each other. They returned to the Apache camp as heroes, greeted with cheers and feasts. Morrison had signed a temporary treaty recognizing Nakai's people as allies. It would need to be renewed every 6 months, which meant constant proving and reproving their value, but it was better than death. Better than the reservations. That night, they celebrated around the fires, drums beating a rhythm of victory. Kiona sat beside Caleb, watching the flames dance, her shoulder brushing his. You changed something today, she said softly. My people were ready to die. Now they have hope. I didn't do anything. Your father did the talking. You did the tracking. You stood between two worlds and refused to break. That's what bridges do. She turned to face him. And that's what I saw in my dream. Not a savior. Just a man who would stand when others ran. Caleb thought about Marcus, about all those years of running. I'm tired of being the man who runs. Good. Kiona's smile was small but real. Because I'm not done needing you yet. There was a playfulness in her tone, lightening the moment. Over the next 3 months, they fell into a rhythm that felt like home. Caleb learned to track, to read signs in bent grass and disturbed dirt, Kiona pushing him with relentless energy. He learned which plants would heal and which would kill, brewing teas under her guidance. He learned to move through the desert like smoke, silent and swift, though he often tripped, earning her laughter. But mostly he learned about Kiona, her fierce spirit, her hidden humor. She pushed him harder than any of the warriors. When he wanted to rest during a long hike, she made him run, teasing. Is the drifter tired already? I thought you survived the desert. When he complained about the heat, she laughed and ran faster, her braids swinging like a pendulum. She was merciless and demanding and absolutely unwilling to accept anything less than his best effort. But in quiet moments, she'd share stories of her childhood, making her more human, more relatable. One night, they sat on a high ridge overlooking the entire canyon. Stars blazed overhead like scattered diamonds. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, a sea of shadows. You're different now, she said quietly, the wind tousling her hair. When you first came, you had the eyes of a hunted animal, always looking for escape. Now you look like you belong. I feel like I do, for the first time in years. Good. She turned to face him, her expression serious. Because my father has given his permission. If you want to marry me, the path is clear. Caleb's heart hammered, surprise mingling with joy. They'd grown close, shared meals and stories and quiet moments by the fire, but this was different. This was permanent. This was choosing to stand still. Just like that. Just like that. Her smile was small but real. Unless you're too afraid. I survived 3 days in the desert, and your terrible cooking during those lessons. She laughed, punching his arm lightly. Hey, I warned you I don't cook well. I talk too much too. And I'll never stay home while you ride off to have adventures. Sounds terrible, right? It will be. Her smile widened. So what do you say, Drifter? Will you stay? Really stay? Caleb thought about all the places he'd run from, all the chances he'd thrown away, all the years he'd spent moving just to avoid standing still. Then he looked at this fierce, impossible woman who'd risked everything to give him a chance at something real. Someone who saw his flaws and pushed him anyway. Yeah, he said. I'll stay. They married under a full moon with the whole tribe watching, the air alive with chants and drums. Nakai spoke words in Apache that Caleb was only starting to understand, but the meaning was clear enough. Two people choosing each other, two lives becoming one, bridging worlds. When Kiona kissed him, her lips tasted like smoke and wild sage and home, a promise of challenges ahead but faced together. But the peace didn't last, as peace rarely does in a world torn by greed and hate. 6 weeks after the wedding, Caleb woke to the sound of horses. Too many horses. Moving too fast, thundering like an approaching storm. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside to find the camp in chaos. Warriors running for weapons. Women gathering children into protective circles. And riding hard from the south came 30 soldiers led by a man Caleb recognized with a sinking heart. Nakai emerged from his lodge, already dressed for war, his knife at his side. That's not Morrison. Who is it? Caleb asked, though dread told him he knew. Trouble. Colonel Hayes. The soldiers spread out in a loose formation, rifles ready, dust swirling around them. Their leader was older than Morrison, maybe 50, with cold gray eyes and a face that looked like carved stone, etched with lines of cruelty. I am Colonel Hayes, the man announced, his voice booming. Captain Morrison has been relieved of command for unauthorized treaties with hostile tribes. As of now, all previous agreements are void. Caleb's blood ran cold, memories flooding back. You can't do that. Hayes' eyes found him, narrowing in recognition. And you must be the turncoat I've heard about. Caleb Thorne, formerly of the 4th Cavalry, dishonorably discharged for refusing to follow orders. His smile was cruel, revealing teeth like a predator's. I remember you, Private. You were always soft, too weak to do what needed doing. And now I learn the land dispute that killed your brother? That was under my orders, clearing savages from valuable territory. The revelation hit Caleb like a bullet, rage boiling up. Hayes had been behind Marcus's death? The dispute was army-sanctioned murder? These people are peaceful, Caleb said, keeping his voice steady despite the storm inside. They helped Morrison find those Comanche raiders. They've done everything asked of them. They're Apache. That's all I need to know. Hayes gestured to his men. This territory is being cleared for railroad expansion. All native camps relocate to reservations by month's end. No exceptions. Nakai's hand moved to his knife. We have treaty rights. You have nothing. Morrison's agreements died with his command. Hayes' voice carried across the canyon. You have 30 days. After that, we come with fire. The soldiers wheeled their horses and rode away, leaving dust and dread in their wake, the revelation hanging like a noose. Kiona found Caleb standing at the edge of camp, staring after Hayes with his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white, the betrayal fresh. You know him, she said, her hand on his shoulder. Yeah, he's the reason I left the army. The reason I've been running for 3 years. Caleb's voice was hollow. And now he killed Marcus. Ordered it. He's the kind of man who sees extermination as efficiency. What do we do? Nakai joined them, his face grim. We have choices. Go to the reservation and die slowly. Run north to the mountains and die fighting. Or, he looked at Caleb. Find a third path. Again, there is no third path. Not with Hayes. Caleb felt despair rising. He won't negotiate. Won't listen to reason. He believes the only good Indian is a dead one, and he'll kill anyone who stands in his way, including me, now that I know about Marcus. Then we fight, Kiona said fiercely, her eyes blazing. Against 30 soldiers? Plus however many more Hayes brings. We'll be slaughtered. Better than cages. Caleb looked at his wife, at the fire in her eyes, and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 3 years running from Hayes' brand of cruelty. Running from the shame of being called coward. Running from the guilt of not standing up when it mattered. But with this new twist, revenge burned alongside justice. No, he said quietly. Not better than cages. Better than dying is living. And to live, we need to think like Hayes, cunning, ruthless. Nakai's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Hayes is coming with fire in 30 days. So we make sure there's nothing here to burn. Over the next week, Caleb's plan took shape amid heated discussions around the council fire. They would dismantle the camp, move the women and children to a hidden canyon Kiona knew about, deep in the mountains where springs ran year-round. Scatter the warriors into small groups. Make it look like they'd disappeared. Gone north to the mountains or south to Mexico, leaving no trace. Hayes wants to make an example, Caleb explained, drawing maps in the dirt. But you can't make an example of ghosts. Let him ride into an empty canyon. Let him waste his time and resources chasing shadows. And while he does, we expose him, for Marcus, for all he's done. And then what? Nakai asked. We hide forever? No. Then we build a case against him. Caleb's mind raced, pulling together fragments of memory from his army days. Hayes has enemies. Officers who think he's too brutal, too quick to kill. If we can document what he's doing, get it to the right people in Washington, we might be able to stop him and avenge the dead. Kiona shook her head, skeptical. White man's paper won't save us. It never has. Maybe not, but it's better than dying for nothing. Caleb met her eyes. Trust me. One more time. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. One more time. They worked through the night, every night. Women packed essentials, food stores, blankets, tools, while warriors erased signs of permanent habitation, scattering fire pits, burying refuse. Lodges came down, poles hidden in caves. Everything that said home was carefully hidden or destroyed, the canyon transformed into a ghost town. By dawn of the relocation, the main canyon looked abandoned for months. Anyone riding through would think the tribe had left weeks ago, perhaps in fear. The women and children moved north under cover of darkness, guided by Kiona and 3 warriors, their path winding through secret passes. The remaining men scattered into the rocks, watching and waiting, rifles at the ready but hidden. Caleb rode alone to a small settlement called Redemption Springs, 2 days south, his horse pushing through sandstorms. There was a newspaper editor there, a man named Samuel Croft who'd written articles critical of army brutality, exposing massacres and corruption. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had, leveraging the press to shine light on Hayes' darkness. He found Croft in a cramped office above the general store, surrounded by stacks of papers and the smell of ink, his desk cluttered with inkwells and half-written exposes. I need your help, Caleb said without preamble, bursting in. Croft looked up, adjusting his spectacles, surprise on his face. I don't know you. My name is Caleb Thorne. Colonel Hayes is planning to massacre an Apache camp in 3 weeks. I need you to document it. Write about it. Make enough noise that someone in Washington pays attention. And he killed my brother. This is personal. Hayes. Croft's expression darkened, leaning forward. I've heard stories about him. Burned out a Cheyenne village up north 2 years ago. Killed everyone, including children. Said they were harboring hostiles. If he's at it again, he's going to do it again. Unless we stop him. With what? A newspaper article? Croft laughed bitterly, but there was interest in his eyes. The army doesn't care what I write. But voters do. Congressmen do. People back east who think the frontier is being civilized, not slaughtered. Caleb leaned forward. Give me a chance to prove what Hayes is. Let me bring you evidence of what he's planning. Then write the truth. That's all I ask. Croft studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. Why do you care? You're white. This isn't your fight. I married an Apache woman. These are my people now. Caleb's voice was steady. And I'm tired of watching good people die because men like Hayes can't see past their hate. Plus, avenging my brother, that's my fight. Something in Croft's expression shifted. All right, bring me evidence. Real evidence, not just hearsay. Bring me that, and I'll write a story that'll reach every newspaper from here to Washington. Caleb rode back to find the camp transformed. From a distance, it looked genuinely abandoned, windswept and forgotten. But hidden in the rocks and caves were 40 warriors, watching and waiting, their positions strategic. Nakai met him at the canyon entrance. The women and children are safe. Now what? Now we wait for Hayes to show his hand. And we document everything. Caleb pulled out a small journal he'd bought in Redemption Springs. Every threat, every action, every word that proves he's not following army regulations. We build a case that even Washington can't ignore. And if he just burns the empty camp, then we have proof he's destroying property without cause. Either way, we win. And for Marcus, we make him pay. But Kiona wasn't convinced when she returned from settling the women and children, her face troubled, dust from the ride still on her skin. This plan requires Hayes to follow rules. But men like him don't follow rules. They make them and break them. I know. But what choice do we have? We could run. Really run. Take everyone north to Canada. Start over where Hayes can't reach us. Caleb took her hands, feeling the calluses from her tracking. And how long before someone else comes? How long before we're running again? He touched her face gently. I've been running my whole life. I'm done. This is our home. I'm not giving it up without a fight, especially now, knowing what he did to Marcus. Kiona leaned into him, her fierce exterior cracking slightly. I'm afraid, she whispered. For the first time since my vision, I'm afraid I was wrong about you. That you'll die trying to save us and avenge your past. Maybe, but at least I'll die standing still. She pulled back and looked at him with those dark, storm-filled eyes. Then we stand together, no matter what comes. Hayes arrived exactly 30 days later with 50 soldiers, 2 cannons, and enough ammunition to level a small town, the column raising a cloud of dust visible from miles away. Caleb watched from a hidden position on the canyon rim as the column rode in. Hayes' face when he saw the empty camp was a study in frustrated rage, twisting into a snarl. Search everything, the colonel roared. They can't have gone far. The soldiers tore through the abandoned lodges, finding nothing. No people. No supplies. No evidence of where the tribe had gone, only echoes of lifelong fled. Hayes dismounted and walked to the center of the empty camp, his boots kicking up dust where cooking fires had burned. Burn it anyway, he ordered. Burn every structure. Salt the earth. Make sure they can't come back. Sir, one of his lieutenants said hesitantly. There's no one here. Burning an empty camp serves no purpose. It serves my purpose. Hayes spun on the man, spittle flying. These savages think they can defy me? Think they can just disappear? I'll make this canyon a monument to what happens when tribes refuse to comply. Caleb's hand tightened on his journal as he scribbled notes furiously. This was it. Hayes ordering destruction without military justification. It wasn't much, but it was something. Evidence of madness. Then Hayes did something unexpected, escalating the threat. Lieutenant Morrison, he called. A young officer stepped forward and Caleb's blood went cold. It was Captain Morrison's younger brother, assigned to Hayes' command after his sibling's disgrace, his uniform crisp but his face pale. Your brother showed weakness with these people, Hayes said. Made unauthorized deals. Treated them like equals. That's why he was relieved. That's why you're here now, to prove you're not soft like he was. Morrison's jaw clenched. Yes, sir. Good. Take 10 men and ride north. Find their trail. When you locate their hiding place, send word. We'll finish what we should have done months ago. Caleb's stomach dropped. The plan was falling apart. If Morrison found the hidden canyon, found the women and children, it would be a massacre. Innocents paying for Hayes' vendetta. He had to act. Now. Caleb scrambled down from his position and ran through the rocks toward where Nakai waited with the warriors. They're sending scouts north. Morrison knows this territory. He'll find them. Nakai's face was grim. Then we stop him before he does. No. Caleb grabbed his arm. If we attack, Hayes has justification for whatever he does next. We become the aggressors. His mind raced. But if we lead Morrison somewhere else, make him think he's found the camp when he hasn't, we buy time. How? The old winter camp. 2 days northwest. We left some supplies there last season. If Morrison finds that, he'll think he's found them. Caleb looked at Kiona. Can you lay a false trail? Yes. But Morrison's good. He'll know it's fake within a day. That's all the time I need. Caleb was already moving toward his horse. I'm riding back to Redemption Springs. Croft needs to see this now, while Hayes is still here burning an empty camp. If I can get him to come back with me, see Hayes' actions with his own eyes, we might have enough to stop this, and bring Hayes down for Marcus. That's 2 days' ride. Hayes will be gone before you return. Then stall him. Make noise in the rocks. Fire warning shots. Make him think you're everywhere and nowhere. Caleb mounted up. Give me 4 days. That's all I need. Kiona caught up with him, her horse alongside. I'm coming with you. No. Your father needs you here. The false trail, the diversion, it only works if you lay it. Your skills are unmatched. Then be careful. She pulled him close, kissed him hard. Come back to me, Drifter. You promised no more running. I'm not running. I'm fighting. There's a difference. He rode off, the weight of vengeance spurring him. He rode hard through the night, pushing his horse to its limits, the stars his only companions. Behind him, he heard sporadic gunfire as Nakai's warriors kept Hayes' soldiers nervous and off balance. Not attacking, just present. Just enough to make Hayes think he was surrounded by an enemy he couldn't see, buying precious time. Caleb reached Redemption Springs 30 hours later, his horse lathered and exhausted, collapsing as he dismounted. He burst into Croft's office to find the editor working by lamplight, papers scattered. Hayes is there. Right now. Burning an empty camp because he can't find the people who lived there. Caleb dropped his journal on the desk. Everything he's said, everything he's ordered. It's all here. But you need to see it yourself, and know this. He admitted to ordering my brother's death. This is bigger than one tribe. Croft read the notes quickly, his expression growing darker. This is good. But it's not enough. I need witnesses. Multiple sources. Otherwise Hayes claims you're lying. Then come with me. Bring your camera. Document what he's doing. That's a 2-day ride. I know. And we're leaving now. Something in Caleb's voice, the raw edge of personal loss, must have convinced him because Croft stood and reached for his coat. Let me get my equipment. They rode through the second night, arriving at the canyon as dawn broke on the 4th day. What they found made Caleb's blood run cold, fury rising. Hayes had ordered his men to dig trenches around the canyon mouth. Artillery positions. He wasn't planning to leave. He was planning to wait, and when the Apaches finally returned, he would slaughter them with cannon fire, turning the canyon into a killing field. But worse was the scene in the camp itself. Morrison had returned with 3 prisoners. Not women or children, but warriors who'd been caught laying the false trail, ambushed in the night. They were tied to posts in the center of the camp, beaten and bloody, faces swollen. Hayes stood in front of them, his voice carrying in the morning air. Where are they? Tell me where they're hiding, and I'll make your deaths quick. The warriors said nothing, their silence a wall. Stubborn. Hayes drew his pistol. Let's see how stubborn you are when I start shooting pieces off you. Croft's camera clicked, capturing the moment. Hayes spun toward the sound, his eyes widening as he saw the newspaperman. What the hell are you doing here? Documenting, Croft said calmly. For my readers back east. They'll be very interested to know that the United States Army tortures prisoners, and that you ordered the murder of civilians like my brother. Hayes' face went purple with rage. Get that man out of here. Arrest him. On what charge? Croft kept taking photographs. Journalism isn't a crime, Colonel. Or has the Army decided the Constitution doesn't apply on the frontier? Soldiers moved toward them, but Caleb stepped between them and Croft, his hand on his gun. You arrest him, and every newspaper in the country hears about it. Is that really the story you want told? Especially with your confession about my brother? Hayes' hand tightened on his pistol, and for a moment Caleb thought the colonel might just shoot them both. Then Morrison spoke up. Sir, with respect, he has a point. If we arrest a journalist, it becomes a bigger story than anything he could write about us. Hayes holstered his weapon with visible effort. Fine. Let him watch. Let him see what happens when savages refuse to cooperate with civilized authority. He turned back to the prisoners. Last chance. Where are they? The lead warrior, a man named Two Hawks, lifted his head. Blood ran from his mouth, but his eyes were clear and defiant. You will never find them. They are protected by spirits you cannot see and strength you cannot break. Hayes shot him. The sound echoed across the canyon like thunder. Two Hawks slumped forward, dead before he hit the ground, blood pooling. Croft's camera captured it all, the click immortalizing the murder. Now, Hayes said to the remaining 2 prisoners. Who wants to die next? Stop. Caleb's voice rang out before he could think about it. This is murder. These men are prisoners of war. They have rights under military law, and you've already confessed to enough crimes. They have no rights. They're not soldiers. They're animals. Hayes pointed the still-smoking pistol at Caleb. And you're a traitor who should be standing beside them. Your brother's death was necessary. Progress demands sacrifices. Then shoot me too. Add another murder to the list Croft is documenting. Make it really clear what kind of officer you are. The standoff stretched, tension thick as fog. Hayes' finger tightened on the trigger. Soldiers shifted nervously, unsure whether they were about to witness an execution or participate in one, some exchanging uneasy glances. Then a voice called from the rocks above. Nakai's voice, strong and clear. Release them, Colonel. Or learn what it means to fight Apaches who have nothing left to lose. Hayes spun, trying to locate the source. Warriors appeared on the canyon rim, dozens of them, rifles pointed down into the camp. They'd been there the whole time, watching, waiting, shadows come to life. You're surrounded, Nakai continued. But I offer you a choice. Leave now and no one dies today. Stay and none of your men see tomorrow. You're bluffing. I have 50 soldiers. And I have 40 warriors who know every rock, every shadow, every approach to this canyon. Your cannons are useless if my men are already among you. Your rifles are worthless if you cannot see your targets. Nakai's voice was cold steel. I do not want war, Colonel. But if you force it, I will give you one you cannot win. Hayes looked around, seeing for the first time how exposed his position was. The canyon walls that had seemed like natural barriers now looked like death traps. His soldiers were clustered together, perfect targets if shooting started, morale cracking under the invisible threat. This isn't over, Hayes snarled, blood from a minor wound on his hand, self-inflicted in rage dripping. No, but today is. Nakai gestured, and warriors began appearing everywhere, surrounding the soldiers without threatening, just present. Just overwhelming. Hayes knew when he was beaten, though hatred burned in his eyes. Mount up. We're pulling back. The soldiers scrambled to comply, cutting the surviving prisoners loose and abandoning their artillery positions. Within minutes, the canyon was empty except for Apaches, Caleb, and Croft. Nakai climbed down from his position, his face grim. Two Hawks was my cousin. Hayes will answer for his death, and for your brother. He will, Croft said, still taking notes. I have everything I need. Photographs of the torture. Testimony of the execution. Evidence of threatened genocide, and a personal confession. He looked at Caleb. Your plan worked. This story will reach Washington within 2 weeks. But Caleb felt no triumph. Only the weight of Two Hawks' death, and the knowledge that Hayes wouldn't stop, his vendetta personal now. Kiona found him sitting by the empty fire pit, staring at the blood-stained post where Two Hawks had died, the ground still dark. You did everything you could, she said softly. It wasn't enough. He's still alive, still in command, still planning to destroy us. And now he knows about Marcus, it'll be worse. But now people will know. Now there will be questions. She sat beside him. That's more than we had before. One man died for those questions. Two Hawks chose his death. He could have spoken, could have told Hayes where the women and children were hiding. He chose silence, chose to protect his people. Kiona took Caleb's hand. Honor his choice by finishing what you started, avenging the past while building the future. Over the next month, Croft's story spread like wildfire, fueled by the photographs and Caleb's testimony about his brother's murder. Newspapers across the country ran his photographs under headlines like Frontier Brutality Exposed and Colonel's Cruelty and Hidden Murders. Congressional hearings were demanded. Military investigations launched. Hayes was recalled to Washington to answer questions, his career crumbling. But he didn't go quietly, his madness deepening. 3 days before he was set to leave, he sent a message to Nakai. Simple and direct. I know where your women and children are hiding. If I go down, I'm taking you all with me, and Thorne's family too. It was a bluff. It had to be. Morrison had never found the hidden canyon. The false trail had worked, misleading them. But Hayes didn't need to find them. He just needed Nakai to believe he could, to provoke a reaction. He's trying to force our hand, Caleb said as they gathered in the main canyon, now partially rebuilt. Make us do something desperate before he leaves. Then we do nothing, Nakai replied. We wait. We trust that Croft's words will bring justice. But that night, scouts reported movement. A detachment of 20 soldiers, led by Hayes himself, riding northwest. Toward the hidden canyon, as if he had insider knowledge. Perhaps a defector among Morrison's men. He's going to find them, Kiona said, her voice tight with fear. My mother is there. The children. Everyone we've tried to protect. Caleb looked at Nakai, saw the war chief calculating odds and options. They could intercept Hayes, but that would mean open warfare. Could mean proving Hayes right about Apache aggression, giving him the excuse he craved. Or they could do nothing and hope Hayes was bluffing. We stop him, Nakai decided. But not with violence. We make him turn back. They rode hard through the night, 20 warriors plus Caleb, racing to intercept Hayes before he reached the hidden canyon. They caught up with him at dawn, blocking the narrow pass that led north, horses forming a wall. Hayes reined in his horse, a cruel smile on his face. Chief Nakai, come to surrender. Come to offer a trade, Nakai replied. You want revenge? Take it from me. I'll ride to Washington with you. Stand trial for whatever crimes you claim. But you leave my people alone. That's not how this works. Then how does it work, Colonel? Caleb rode forward, his voice steady. You've already been exposed. Croft's story is in every major newspaper. Congressional hearings are scheduled. Even if you massacre that camp, it won't save your career. It'll only prove you're the monster everyone says you are, and the murderer who killed my brother. I don't care about my career anymore. Hayes' eyes were wild, unhinged, the pressure breaking him. I care about finishing what I started. Making sure these savages understand there's no place for them in a civilized world, and settling old scores with cowards like you. You've gone mad, Caleb said flatly. Maybe. But I'm the one with 20 armed men, and you're the one standing in my way. Hayes reached for his pistol, his movement quick. Caleb was faster. The shot rang out before Hayes cleared leather. The colonel fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder, blood spreading across his uniform like a blooming flower. For a moment, everything stopped, the canyon silence save for Hayes' groans. Then Hayes' soldiers raised their rifles, and Nakai's warriors did the same, a powder keg ready to explode. Hold! Morrison rode forward, his face pale but determined. Stand down. All of you. That man shot your commanding officer. One of the soldiers protested. That man saved all our lives. Morrison dismounted and knelt beside Hayes, examining the wound. The colonel has been acting erratically for days. Against orders. Against reason. He looked up at his men. Any of you want to die following a madman's vendetta? Silence, broken only by Hayes' curses. That's what I thought. Morrison stood. We're turning back. Colonel Hayes will receive medical treatment and face military tribunal. What happens after that isn't our concern. I'll kill you for this, Hayes hissed at Caleb. I'll see you hanged. Maybe. But your war is over. Caleb holstered his weapon. You lost. Morrison and his men took Hayes and rode south. Nakai's warriors watched them go, weapons still ready, but no longer needed, the tension easing like a storm passing. When they were gone, Kiona turned to Caleb. You shot a United States Army colonel. I shot a madman who was about to kill someone, and the killer of my brother. The law won't see it that way. I know. Caleb looked at his wife, at the life he'd built, at the home he'd finally stopped running from. I'll probably hang for it. But he didn't. The military tribunal took 3 months, a grueling process of testimonies and evidence. Caleb testified, detailing Hayes' confessions and actions. Nakai testified, his words carrying the weight of a chief. Croft brought his photographs and articles, painting a picture of systemic abuse. And in the end, the board ruled that Hayes had been acting outside his authority, that Caleb's shot had been necessary defense of innocent lives, and that Hayes' past crimes, including Marcus's death, were exposed. Hayes was dishonorably discharged and imprisoned for the murder of 2 hawks and others, his empire of hate crumbling. The Apache camp was granted permanent status. Not a reservation, but recognition as a sovereign settlement with protected rights, a hard-won victory. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Caleb returned to the canyon to find it transformed. New lodges had been built, gardens planted with seeds from afar, children playing by the creek, their laughter a balm. Life continuing despite everything that had tried to stop it. Kiona met him at the canyon entrance, and he saw tears on her face for the first time since they'd met, relief overwhelming. I thought they'd keep you, she said. I thought I'd lost you. You can't lose me. I told you, I'm done running. He pulled her close. This is home. You're home. Nothing changes that. That night, they sat with Nakai under the stars, the sky a velvet blanket. The chief passed a pipe, and they smoked in comfortable silence for a while, the smoke curling like visions. My daughter's vision was true, Nakai said finally. You stood between 2 worlds and refused to break. I almost did, more times than I can count. But you didn't. That's what matters. Nakai studied the stars. Hayes is gone. The treaty is signed. But there will be others. Men who want this land, who see us as obstacles. The fight isn't over. No, Caleb agreed. But we won this round. That's something. It's everything. Kiona squeezed his hand. Because it proves we can win. That resistance isn't futile. That standing matters. Caleb thought about 2 hawks, about his sacrifice. About Marcus, finally avenged. About all the people who died so others could live free. We honor them by continuing. By building something that lasts. 3 riders appeared on the canyon rim at dawn 2 years later. Caleb spotted them from where he was teaching his infant son to walk. The boy had Kiona's dark eyes and Caleb's stubborn determination, toddling with fierce focus. The riders descended, and Caleb recognized the lead horse. Federal marshals, their badges glinting. His stomach dropped. Had they changed their minds about Hayes? Was he about to be arrested after all, the past catching up? But the lead marshal dismounted with a smile. Mr. Thorne? I have a letter for you. From Washington. Caleb opened it with shaking hands. Read it twice to make sure he understood, the words blurring slightly. What is it? Kiona asked, joining him with their son in her arms. It's from Congress. They're establishing a new position. Federal liaison to the Western tribes. Someone to mediate disputes, prevent conflicts like what happened with Hayes. He looked up at her, stunned. They're offering me the job. Will you take it? Caleb looked around the canyon. At his home, his family, the life he'd built from nothing but stubborn determination and the refusal to run. Then he looked at his son, at the world the boy would inherit. A world still fraught but with bridges being built. Only if we can do it together. As partners. The way it should have been from the start. Kiona's smile was fierce and proud. Then we accept. The years that followed weren't easy. There were conflicts, betrayals, moments when violence seemed inevitable. But each time, Caleb stood between the worlds and refused to break. Kiona beside him, Nakai advising until his passing, and slowly, painfully, they built something new. Not peace exactly, but understanding. Respect. The possibility that two different worlds could exist without destroying each other. And when Caleb died at 73, surrounded by children and grandchildren who carried both cultures in their blood, his last words were for Kiona. No regrets. She touched his face, her own weathered now but still fierce, still unbreakable. Not a single one. But tell me my vision. It wasn't just fate, was it? I chose you because you buried Red Hawk, because I saw kindness in you that day from afar. The dream, it was partly me making it true. He smiled weakly. I knew, and it made it all the more real. Good. Because tomorrow, someone else will have to stand in the gap. Someone else will have to refuse to break. They will, she promised. We taught them how. The desert wind whispered through the canyon that night, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. And somewhere in the rocks, the spirits of those who'd fought and died for the chance to live free watched over the sleeping camp. Because some things are worth standing for, worth fighting for, worth building even when the whole world says it's impossible. And sometimes the most broken people build the strongest bridges. Thank you so much for listening to this story of courage, sacrifice, and the power of choosing to stand when running would be easier. If this tale moved you, if you felt Caleb's struggle or Kiona's fierce determination, please hit that like button and subscribe to Wild West Tales Untold for more stories that remind us what it means to be truly brave. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Caleb's position? Would you have taken the trial? Face down Hayes? And where are you listening from? Are you in the mountains like Caleb and Kiona, or somewhere completely different? Your stories and perspectives make this community special, so please share them. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in the fight itself, but in choosing to stand still when every instinct screams to run. Stay strong out there, and I'll see you in the next story from the Wild West.